I'd like to welcome you to the Campus Ministry Business Forum. My name is Ben Gates, and I direct campus ministry here at Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne, as well as on the campus of Indiana Institute of Technology. The Campus Ministry Business Forum is a joint programming venture between Campus Ministry and also the Dormer School of Business here at IPFW. Each month we bring in a local entrepreneur or CEO to talk to the students about ethics, about integrity, about quality in business, and what makes for a successful business here in the local area. Today's episode features John Hopkins. He's the Vice President of Sweetwater Sound, just a very successful business here in Fort Wayne in the field of electronics, sound, and musical instrumentation. And we're thrilled to present to you today this conversation that John is going to have with some of the students here at IPFW about what makes for great business. Great business makes for great lives here in Fort Wayne, and that's what we're all about with Greater Fort Wayne Campus Ministry. So I'm going to turn it over to John. Please enjoy the conversation.
So I'm John Hopkins. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at Sweetwater. I teach, we have a really intensive class for new people that come to work at Sweetwater, especially in sales, that goes on for 13 weeks. We put people through training that they don't make us a nickel for 13 weeks. They just are learning, no matter where they come from, if they came to work at Sweetwater from Berklee College of Music, or if they've been managing one of our competitors' stores. We put 100% of our salespeople through this program called Sweetwater University. And during that, I teach one class. I think that maybe they've learned that, I'm not a very good teacher, so I only am allowed to teach one class during 13 weeks. But it's called Open-Minded Selling, and it speaks to no matter who you're talking to and no matter how you're dealing with people, to always have an open mind, to not pigeonhole people based on their accent or based on the kind of music that they play, based on the gear that they own and things like that. And so in that open-minded selling class, I talk about the fact that Chuck passed on to me some folks who he had dealt with, and I use a couple of examples. And so one of the examples that I use is a guy who just called up Sweetwater out of the clear blue and happened to talk to Chuck, who was the only salesperson back then, about 25 years ago. And this guy wanted to buy a keyboard for his wife, and he'd seen a little tiny ad in the back of one of the magazines, in the back of like Keyboard Magazine, that seemed to imply that Sweetwater was a specialist in selling this certain type of instrument called a Kurzweil. And so the guy calls up, and the lady answers the phone, and it's in Chuck's living room, and says, the lady says, "Hi, Sweetwater, how can I direct your call?" And quickly cups her hand over the handset and says, "Chuck, I've got a live one for you on line 2." And he pushes down the button, that like a physical button in the phone, to pick up line 2, and starts talking to this guy. And the guy says, "So I'm interested in buying this particular Kurzweil keyboard." And unlike every other conversation that this customer had, Chuck said, "What are you going to do with it? How are you going to use it?" Instead of just saying, "What's the best price that you've gotten and I'll beat it," or "What's the best price you've gotten and I'll match it." Chuck said, "What are you going to do with it? How are you going to use it?" And very quickly, Chuck took this customer that was calling for a keyboard that was about $2,000 and switched him to a keyboard that was much better for him, that cost about $5,000. And this is way back, 25 years ago. And it was the right thing to do, which is what we always do at Sweetwater, is the right thing, no matter what. If we felt like the right thing was to tell somebody to buy their guitar at Guitar Center that's around the block, we would tell them to do that. We always want to do the right thing for our customers. But that was the right thing to do. And so this guy got this keyboard, and so during the conversation about it, when Chuck was asking, what are you going to do with it, he found out that the customer was not going to use the keyboard for himself. He was calling for his wife, who happens to be a piano player and had a master's degree in piano pedagogy. Usually I tell people that's like teaching techniques. Around here, you guys probably know what pedagogy is, but his wife had a master's degree in pedagogy, and so Chuck starts finding out all about this customer, which is an unusual situation for most people that call into a mail order company to find out about a customer. And so found out that this guy owns his own small business. He's got about 25 employees, does heating and air conditioning work, and is just really into buying, into getting like really good stuff for his wife, who loves classical piano, and she likes to hear the sound of a real sounding classical piano, not necessarily a digital piano, but she wanted an electronic keyboard to take out and play at weddings and things like that. And so finally figuring all this stuff out, Chuck sells him this keyboard, and over time they get to be good friends, going and meeting each other at trade shows and working together on some business things. And eventually at a trade show, Chuck says, "Hey, you know what? You seem to like the music business a lot better than you do what you're doing. You ought to think about coming to work for me." The guy's like, "Man, that's crazy, because my company is bigger than yours, significantly bigger than Sweetwater is. And we've lived in the same place with our families, all the siblings of the husband and wife are all in the same place. And it seems crazy to think that we would ever move to Indiana from the state of Delaware on the East Coast." But that seed was planted. And the guy kept thinking about it and realizing that he was spending more time reading Keyboard Magazine than he was Domestic Engineering, the big magazine for the mechanical contracting trade. And so after thinking about it for a while, he talks to his wife, a couple of kids, and they decide to move to Indiana and start working at Sweetwater. That was 24 years ago. And that's really my story. That's how I got here. If Chuck would have told me at that first call, if he would have said, "It's 1995, but if you find a better deal, I'll match it," and hung up the phone, then I would have never bought anything from him. I would have not become friends. And when I got here, I started as a salesperson at Sweetwater back in 1992. And when I started talking to customers around the country, and I was the first salesperson. I'm still one of the only, maybe the only salesperson through, now that there's probably been, over the last 25 years, we have about 320 sales engineers now. Over the last 25 years, I'm sure that we've had something over 500, and I think that I'm probably the only one that's that wasn't a musician. And so I rely on my wife for whatever musical thing I've got. If Chuck would have just gone, I started here. I got into doing to selling stuff, and on the phone, and I'm talking to customers who are some of Chuck's old customers and stuff, and I realized that I thought that he and I were really good friends, but he was really good friends with all these like 2,000, 3,000 people around the country, the same as me. They're all the same level of friends. And that's one of the things that makes Sweetwater different. And makes it so fun to work there, is that in every circumstance, from the first day that somebody starts work at Sweetwater, we know that our kind of subheading tenet among every transaction that we have, among every relationship that we have, is that we absolutely just want to deal with everyone like they're our best friend. We want to treat you, we want to be your friend as a customer. And so I've got 320 or so sales engineers now, and every one of them has got friends around the country. And so in every dealing that we have with them, we want to deal with them like they're our friend. They are our friend. And so we want to take care of them that way. It doesn't matter about a particular deal or a transaction or whether we make money or lose money. And so it falls into some of the other things that are super important to us. Like we say over and over again, that we just want to do the right thing, whatever that is. We want to do the right thing in every circumstance, in every relationship, whether it's a relationship with an employee, with a vendor, or with a customer. And so we always want to do the right thing. People say that, but sometimes when the rubber hits the road and when you're about to lose, $100 or $1,000 or $100,000 on a thing, all of a sudden, maybe you waffle a little bit on doing the right thing when you know that's the right thing to do. And we believe that if you do the right thing, then even in those circumstances where you're going to lose money on a particular transaction or in a particular negotiation with a vendor or potentially a negotiation with an employee about salary or whatever, we always want to do the right thing, whatever that means. And so Chuck did the right thing by me and allowed me to be here. He sold me the right thing to begin with. Then he hired me. I was able to sell my business in Delaware and move the family here. And Fort Wayne has just been a wonderful place to call home for the last 25 years, 24 years for us, coming up on 25 now. And I've raised my kids here. My son is a cellist and a nuclear engineer who is now working in the oil exploration business. My daughter is a violinist and has a master's degree in social work, and she was a practicing social worker until she had kids. So they're both now grown, married, they both have kids of their own, and so I'm just really fortunate to have a wonderful family like that also. And I think the last thing that I would say is that I try to do in places where there are potentially influencers, future influencers. The value of musical education just can't be overstated, in my opinion. And so you will find as you get out into the world that there will be many, 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 many people who are professionals, and they're attorneys and doctors and accountants and salespeople, and are making a great living in what we would consider to be a professional profession as compared to the musical profession, that have a background in musical, that had a musical education background, that took piano for 5, 10, 12 years, that took band instruments, saxophone or clarinet or whatever for a long time, that took drums lessons for a long time. And the things that you learn there, I think even more so than in other areas of education, like practicing the hard stuff, kind of like when you learn another language. You know, it's easy to practice the easy stuff, but it's harder to practice the hard stuff. But practicing the hard stuff, practicing until you get it right, is just really important. And so I would continue to promote. My wife has been a piano teacher has played piano for this is her 50th year of playing piano. And she's been a piano teacher for 40 years or so. And we have met, through our careers, met lots and lots of people at lots of levels, at lots of parties. And I would say that probably the one thing that people say to us that they regret now that they are 40, and I'm talking to you now that you're 20, right? But the one thing that people say that they regret now that they're 40 is that their mom, I don't know why it's always the mom, it's never the dad, but their mom let them quit taking blank, fill in the blank. Usually it's piano because we're talking with a piano person, but their mom let them quit. They only took their 3 years, and their mom let them quit. And they just wish that that their mom would have forced them to keep taking piano so that they could sit down and play at church or play, just with a group of people standing around or whatever. So as some of you are going to be thinking about having kids in another 5 or 10 years, I would preach that also, that don't let them quit. Have them take some kind of music lessons. So there's my little music advocacy speech. But I'm happy to take questions, just have a conversation. But that's a little bit of my background also, and I'm happy to explore that also for you, however you'd like.
What was the hardest thing for you to move from the East Coast over here to Indiana?
I would say being away from family. Yeah. Which is becoming, back when we moved here 25 years ago, it was way less prevalent. Now over the last probably 30 years, it's really become almost unusual for people to stay where they were raised, right? Almost everybody leaves. Actually, what's changed now, which blows my mind and has nothing to do with the topic I think of today, is, and you guys probably understand this way more than I do, but I've got nephews and nieces and stuff that and I just heard somebody else talk about this just the other day, that this new thing in my opinion, from what I can tell in the last 3 or 4 years, 2, 3, 4 years, is people find a place to move and then they find a job. like in my whole life, first of all, you always just stay where you were and you found the job. You worked in the industry that was in your town. Then you got so that like somebody recruited you away from there, and to fulfill your professional aspirations, you moved somewhere, frequently to big cities, New York City, Chicago, whatever, or you just moved somewhere to work at, you know, at GM or whatever, right? And now all of a sudden, like I'm sure you guys must know people that are doing this, like you figure out the kids, like you guys, graduate from college and they figure out where they want to go, where they want to live. And so with no job whatsoever, they may be married. I've got nephews that are married. They move to Charleston because that's where they want to live. And then they figure they'll find a job. Blows my mind, but this is the transitions we go through. But I'd say that leaving family was hard because my wife has a couple of siblings. They had kids. We were super close to those nephews. My brother has got a bunch of kids, and we were close to those nephews and nieces. And so moving away from those people was difficult, and being a 12-hour drive away was hard to get back. But that was it. Yeah, this was a great move for us. Honestly, we were way out in the country, chicken farms. There were more chickens than people, I tell people all the time. And it was, we had to get in the car and drive to a gas station to meet a pizza delivery guy. Like we were so far out in the country that the pizza guy would not come to our house. So we had to like meet him halfway from, you know, wherever the pizza place was. So we moved here and we were like, wow, there are places, you can go buy Tylenol at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's amazing. I can't believe that places stay open after 9. So it was a great move for us. We lived in very close to downtown Fort Wayne when we first moved here. Now we live downtown Fort Wayne. We live in a condo across from the courthouse. And we love Fort Wayne. So.
What's your favorite part of your job?
The favorite part of my job. I love doing a lot of different things, and that probably is what that's what lights my fire the most. So I really love, so there is no single favorite, and I think that's what is my favorite, is that there's not any favorite, if that makes sense to you. So when I was in sales for a few years, and I did a fine job, and I made money and all that kind of stuff, but I felt like I was having the same conversation with a different person every time I picked up the phone call, every time I picked up the phone. And I would do that for 60, 70, 80 calls a day, and kind of having that same conversation over and over again. It's about a different piece of equipment maybe, or frequently it's about the same piece of equipment. And so doing that after having owned my own company for a number of years was I didn't like it. We've got other salespeople that have been doing this for 25 years and absolutely love it. It just didn't light my fire. I really do like having a diverse number of things on my plate. And so so right now at Sweetwater, we have a guy who's the executive vice president and chief sales officer, and he's in charge of the bulk of those 320 salespeople that are on the phone doing exactly what I did 20 some years ago, making friends around the country, selling gear. And then I'm responsible really for everything else in the company, from accounting. The chief financial officer reports to me, marketing, even our local retail store where we have some salespeople. We've got 15 or so salespeople in the local retail store, and the local retail store reports up to me. The recording studio, I'm in charge of all the construction that happens at Sweetwater, which, if you guys have been around here for a while, you've seen a bunch of construction. We've grown we redeveloped a parcel that we had about 80,000 square feet on, and over the last few years we've grown that to about 320,000 square feet. So I'm in charge of all that construction. All the contractors work with me. Customer service reports up with me, and people in the recording studio. So that diversity, whether it's 1 minute I'm talking about employee benefit plans, and the next minute I'm trying to outlaw you're a lawyer, and the next minute I'm working on a construction project. That's really what I find super cool. So I keep a lot of plates spinning, basically. Yeah. It's a good question. I don't know that I've had that question asked before.
If you could learn an instrument, like which is your favorite one?
Well, I have to say my favorite one is the piano. So when I'm mixing, which I do, so one of my side things, my wife for about 10 years was director of worship at our church. And so she had the best gear of any like medium-sized church on the planet. So, I mean, she had great equipment. But whenever I mix, I like to push the piano up in the mix more than I do the guitars, and everybody else in the new world of music at church like is pumping up the guitars. And so I like the piano. But I must say that probably what would light me up a little bit more right now would be, I hate to even say this and have it be on tape, but I think probably guitar. They're so pretty, you know, like they're like eye candy. That's one of the reasons that people that buy guitars, I love them because they always buy a whole bunch of them, right? Like my wife, we bought one piano back 35 years ago, and we've had that same piano for 35 years. Like she loves her Yamaha grand piano. Every guitar player I know has, 20. And so because they sound different and they look different. And so I do love that. I think that pedals are cool now. So you can get like a gazillion pedals. My daughter is playing electric violin now, and she's running her violin through a Marshall amp and a bunch of pedals. And so that's cool. So the pedal thing, having a bunch of different choices with guitars, being able to go acoustic or electric. So I have to say that as much as it would be my wife's chagrin that I would want to learn how to play guitar, and I just haven't taken the time. That's one of those things that I have too many plates spinning to spin another plate with guitar on it. Yeah.
So do you have any next step plan around Indiana? I mean, since you have business here, so you might have a next plan around Indiana.
For me personally, I don't. I love what I do. And people talk about like retirement and stuff like that. And man, like when you really do, it sounds so cliche and I hate that, but when you really do love what you do, which I would entice everyone to try to do something that you love, like don't follow the money, follow the passion. But when you love what you do, like coming to work is not really work anymore. There are clearly days that are difficult days, that I'm dealing with difficult customers or difficult vendors or difficult employees. There are sometimes that I have a little joke that sometimes, around, especially with my HR director who reports to me, that I just say the word car wash, and he knows that I'm thinking that the perfect business is an automatic car wash that you just put coins in, and it's definitely a joke, but with 0 employees, because sometimes employees can be some of the more frustrating, employee issues can sometimes be somewhat frustrating, but every day is so diverse and so fun that I just love coming to work every day. And so what we've tried to do is we are building a really great bench at Sweetwater, a really great group of people who are younger and who can take off some of the burden and make my life a little bit easier. I give them the more difficult jobs, and I can keep on having the more fun jobs. And so that's been nice over the last few years as the company has grown in scale, but I just love it. So I don't see myself doing anything different. We've got a diverse set of companies that I'm involved with Sweetwater around Fort Wayne, from flight school to we own Lange Optical, which is a small optical company with 4 stores in Fort Wayne, and so there's just so much fun diversity in all the different things that I don't plan on doing anything different, and I don't plan on retiring anytime soon. So it just is a lot of fun to do that. And it's a lot of fun because at the end of the day, it's all about people. So it's customers that we're selling things to and that we're taking care of. It's vendors that are selling things to us that we try to have a great relationship, better than any of our competitors. One of our things is we want to be partners with our vendors. And so we aren't like hard school negotiators trying to wring the last nickel out of every deal. We want every deal to be win-win for both us and our vendor and for us and our customer. And so as long as it's win-win situations, whether that's on a real estate transaction or the purchasing of millions of dollars of Fender guitars and then selling those to individual end users, we want every one of those transactional deals to be win-win situations. So if there's a loser, then we feel, if there's a loser, even if we're the winner and the other person is the loser, then we feel like we've all lost. And we try to permeate that concept through the whole company, even to our merchandising, to our purchasing people and so on. So I don't know how I got there, but taking care of people, that's where it really, the person at the vendor that just maybe lost or feels like they lost, that's a bad situation. If they feel like they won, then that's great. If I feel like I won, then that's great. If my customer feels like they won, that's great. If my employee and my relationship is a win-win situation, that's great. And so at the end of the day, it's all about taking care of these people. Like, the company names can change. It's really about the people. And I don't care if you're selling them Ditch Witches or if you are selling them life insurance or, fill in the blank, or wire, right? Like that we just make wire and we sell it to somebody. At the end of the day, I'm always dealing with people, and I only want to worry about the person. And so that's why I'm much more interested in the person and the relationship with people than I am a transaction or a company.
What do you use, a person, software, or platform how do you keep track of everything, the time management? What do you use?
I keep most of it in my head. I'm trying to do a better job and I'm mixing myself between some Evernote stuff. So over the last year, my Evernote, whatever that thing is called, database. My Evernote database in the cloud has, I've had to upgrade it to the pro version or whatever. So I'm keeping a lot of stuff in Evernote. And then there's an app that is cross-platform that I use called it's called To-Do List, and it's on iOS and it's on Mac. And so I use that app for more of a list management kind of thing to keep track of dates and when a project is due. Those are the two primary things that I'm using that are outside of our customer relationship management system that we've built at Sweetwater. But those would be the two apps that I use and I guess would recommend.
Do you do anything as far as how do you do goal setting? How do you set your goals? What has worked for you as far as goal setting? I want to graduate, I want to do this and this. Are there anything that you can suggest in regards to the goal setting?
Man, I don't know what to tell you there. Chuck, who owns Sweetwater, 100%, and I, who actually now have gotten to be pretty darn good friends. So I was the best man at his wedding, and so we've crossed the bridge from me being one of 2,000 or something, just like everybody else. But both of us kind of subscribe to a similar philosophy, and I don't know how much I recommend it to people, but we just we don't make long-term plans. So there's not a 5-year plan for Sweetwater that's written down. We have a hard time coming up with a plan for, right now we're in the middle of trying to plan 2017, and that's not even that easy for us. We just kind of believe in plugging away, doing the right thing, taking care of people, and then the results are going to come a little bit more than we do, set a goal out 5 years of something and try to aim for that goal. So it's much more of a granular thing for both of us of just doing what we need to do every day, and results will come for us. So that may speak to why also why neither of us have a degree. So I dropped out of college after 1 year, and it just was not for me. I flunked freshman English, E101, University of Delaware, and Chuck out of high school was a hairbreadth away from signing up with the Marine Corps band, the President's Band, and he is still a fabulous saxophone player, plays out probably 4 nights a month or something like that, 2 weekends a month. And so he was going to play saxophone in the band, and he went to Indy. They were a hairbreadth away from signing, and he did a thing that I also, that my wife and I have done over many years and recommend, is just said, you know what, I want to sleep on this. And so virtually every transaction that we've done over our whole life, buying a vacuum cleaner or buying a car, we always sleep on it. There's no deal that's so good it's not going to be there still tomorrow, in our opinion. And so he came home and slept on it. His buddy went in, and he decided, you know what, I'm not going to do this. And he went on the road as a musician, and then he's got a whole story and started Sweetwater, and here we are today. And if he had spent 4 years in the band, in the Marine Corps band, then maybe he would have extended that, and been a career, and got out of the Marine Corps after 20 years with a pension and all that stuff, and life would be completely different for him and me and the other 1,100 people that work out at Sweetwater right now. So I don't. There you go. There's my long bad answer to goal setting. So yeah, I appreciate it.
You mentioned it's important to always do the right thing. How do you keep that in your company culture as you guys continue to grow?
It's really hard. Yeah, it was way easier when we knew every single person and we were able to spend time in their homes and with their families and all that stuff. So the first piece of it is hiring the right people. And I really believe strongly, we believe strongly that we need to hire people that culturally fit with us. That's more important than having the right skills. We can teach people skills. It's really, really difficult to teach people ethics. Like by the time that they get to the point where they're entering their workforce and they're somewhere between 17 and a half and 25, and they're entering the workforce somewhere in there, like the work has been done. The good work has been done, or the damage has been done, And so once they're there, if they have some passion for something, for whatever, for fill in the blank for sweeping floors, selling music gear, playing an instrument, doing service and soldering, ordering things, doing clerical work, if they have a passion for it, we can teach them the skills. It's great to have a background of skills from college that can certainly be applicable. But if they don't have the right, if they aren't a cultural fit with us, if they don't have the right ethics kind of coming in, then it's almost impossible to teach that out of them. And so that's our first bar. So we give everybody personality profile, psychological tests. We have a pretty intensive interviewing process. So we try to hire the right people first. That's key, and everything else just builds on that. Then we do drive that concept, the idea of doing the right thing, at every event, at every meeting, at every management meeting with our managers. We try to keep managers on board for a long time. So virtually everybody that's a VP at Sweetwater has been at Sweetwater for something like 10 plus years. Our folks stay a really long time. We provide an atmosphere that I think is conducive to them staying for a long time. And so, again, over time, that thing happens. It's trained hard with salespeople during that 13 weeks of Sweetwater University. And recently we hired a lady who is a senior VP of, and so that would be one person that has not been here for 10 years, senior VP of customer experience, as our first kind of not Chuck and Jeff Radke, our chief sales officer, and me, who have been really in control of the customer experience at Sweetwater. So we feel like we're just getting so big now that we need to have somebody who's dedicated to doing nothing but that. And so we hired her a year ago almost, and she's doing a great job as a VP of customer experience. So kind of like the customer service person. And a big part of her job is, yesterday she came into my office and we've been back and forth with a customer who received a guitar that was scratched on the back because the tremolo bar had gotten loose in the case. So there's a little metal bar that is on the back of the guitar that you play a chord and then you can make it kind of give a vibrato. And that bar had gotten loose in the case. And so it's one thing to fix that customer, and that's, she's responsible to make sure that that customer becomes super happy and loves us and all that stuff. We want to take care of them, more important than anything else, get them a new guitar, do whatever we've got to do to make them happy. But more importantly, I don't want it to happen again, right? And so she came into my office, even though she's in charge of customer experience, she came in my office with an answer to what we can do with these tremolo bars to keep this from happening again, even though, you know, we've heard it happen a couple of times. Anyway, so that's her job. So she's also involved in that. So it has to be a filter down thing. And man, like with so many things in life, it's one thing to, you know, to say it, it's another thing to do it. But then if you fail, if you, kind of like it's hard to regain trust. It's one thing to like build trust over a bunch of time, and it only takes one missive to lose trust. And that same thing happens with customers, and that same thing happens, you know, in the business. So if we, for some crazy reason, like let something happen that doesn't hold to our tenet of always doing the right thing, and we kind of do the wrong thing, then, man, it takes a heck of a lot. Like it takes a lot to build that trust back up again. It takes a heck of a lot of doing the right thing to overcome this time that you allowed a wrong thing to go through. So we're really passionate about that. We work really hard at it. And everyone, I believe everyone at Sweetwater knows that, from the people who pack the boxes in the warehouse, to the people who answer the phones, to the salespeople.
Sweetwater is a private company, right?
Yes.
How did you guys decide to like maintain that private status rather than becoming a public company?
So, a number of years ago, I'm bad with times and dates, but 12, 15 years ago or so, actually, no, maybe more than that, 17 or 18 years ago, Chuck actually sold 80% of the company to an equity, to a private equity firm. And after about 5 years, which is the length of time that private equity firms normally hold companies, they wanted to, you know, move on, and it didn't look like it was in kind of a bad time for the internet. They weren't going to make a fortune going public, so they looked to try to sell it, and through a whole bunch of circumstances that are way too deep to get into here, it would just take too long. Chuck was able to buy the business back. So he had this little bit of experience with having external owners in private equity, even though it's not really stockholders. We also have a lot of friends that are leaders of publicly traded companies like Vera Bradley, and the difference between when Vera Bradley was private and public, and you know, Tower Bank. So in various industries. For us, and this is really me speaking for Chuck, because Chuck and Lisa, his wife, own 100% of the business. But we just feel like there would not be anything to be gained by going public. We have enough cash flow that's thrown off through the operations of the business to do what we want to do, to grow the business, to give a good lifestyle to them and to employees. And so we just don't see that there would be anything really to be gained by going public. One of the things that, and people ask me also, like, you know, well, you've been there a long time and you don't own any of the company. There is a really cool thing as you guys are thinking about like going out into business and being entrepreneurs. Some of you, I'm sure, are thinking about being entrepreneurs. There's great clarity that I don't see in anything else in having a person that one person, husband, wife, whatever, but one person that owns 100% of the business. As soon as there is a partner, as soon as there's somebody else that owns 1%, let's say I owned 1% of Sweetwater. Every time that Chuck wants to do something, if he wants to waste $100, then without even asking me, because he can do anything he wants owning 99% of the business, he just wasted one of my dollars, right? If he wants to use money to buy season tickets at the Colts game or whatever, right? Like, he's using 1% of my money to do that. Am I going to get 1% of the benefit of it? I don't know. You know, there's trickiness that comes in that when, you know, sometimes it's necessary because, you know, of capital needs. But my recommendation to people always is try to raise capital any other way, try to do it with debt from banks, try to do it with subordinated debt from friends. Do whatever you can to maintain having like 100% control, and not just like 51% control, right? So that's the thing that everybody has heard over all the years, is that whoever owns 51% basically can do anything they want. 49% is worthless, 51% is worth everything in privately held companies. But my deal is that, you know, having any separate ownership just creates an unclear situation that the clarity of Sweetwater. Chuck decides that we want to, you know, spend $1 million changing up the paving of the parking lot. We just do it. Like, we don't have to ask anybody. We don't ask bankers. We don't ask investors. We do it. So that also speaks to like being able to do the right thing. A lot of times when there's other people, unless you're in lockstep on this ethical value, which you can't really be with a bunch of public investors, but unless you're in lockstep, you have a really hard time like doing the right thing, in my opinion. I talk to friends who run publicly held companies who say, man, you know, it's just such a bummer to have to like play to the quarterly earnings report and that quarterly conference call. And, you know, we're making decisions that are not the right thing for the business, probably not the right thing for the customer, certainly not the right thing for the long term, but it's what I have to do to make that, to get my quarterly earnings call so that the stock doesn't go in the toilet. It's just, it's all not good in our opinion. So there you go. That's my preaching against publicly traded companies, I guess.
Since you own your own company before you turning to Sweetwater, other than like the industry, not like including the industry switch, but what lessons you've learned now would you really wish you knew back when you had your own company?
Wow, that's good. I think that, kind of speaking back to what I said before, like it's a lot of what makes Chuck and I work so well together is that DNA of taking care of people, doing the right thing, focusing the company on those kinds of principles has been in my makeup since the beginning, probably. And so I don't know. I can't think of what I've learned a ton. I was in the contracting business before, now we're in the retail business. There's huge differences in the industries that speak to cash flow and requirements of capital and those kinds of things that you know, this business is great. Having a diverse, there's an incredible power that I did not have in my old business at having a diverse customer base, geographically, volume of business kind of thing, versus like having so much of your business tied up in one customer or in one vendor. So having that spread out is more powerful than I ever would have imagined. And so at Sweetwater, our average order size is about $600. At my old business, I think the average order size was probably $50,000 or something. And so you lose one deal and it just like kills you, you know, and so that diversity, we don't have any vendor that makes up more than 1% of our business. There's no state that makes up more than 7% of our business or something like that. So even if California would fall off into the Pacific Ocean, we really would not lose, you know, our business wouldn't suffer that much, even if a state as huge as California is. So I think that diversity in geographical was more powerful than I ever would have imagined.
Since you mentioned that you care about people, and then since you have been a salesperson for years, from your experience, what is your secret to build a relationship with customer, vendor, and competitor in order to get a win-win situation?
We don't want win-win situations with our competitors. Those are the only ones that I would say that we don't want a win-win situation with. We're totally happy to like just beat the crap out of our competitors. Okay, so that's we don't want that. On the other side, I would say that we have to keep thinking about them as people and not as companies. It's really easy to divorce the person from the company, and it's a heck of a lot easier. Kind of like it's easier to like to be mean to somebody in email or text messages than it is to be mean to somebody face to face. Like if you're in email, it's really easy. Phone call, it's not quite as, it's not nearly not as hard, but it's also easy. Face to face, it's much more difficult. So keeping thinking of them as being a person makes life it makes it a lot easier to look for win-win situations when I'm trying to deal with somebody as a person. I also think that I try to, and I talk to my people about trying to keep in mind as we're dealing with these people, not as companies, but we're dealing with these people, trying to keep in mind that you don't know what's going on with them. I have no idea what's going on in your life today, and you don't have any idea what's going on in my life today. As I'm checking out at the grocery store and the person who's checking me out is kind of rude to me or whatever, I honestly don't know what's going on back at home and what happened to them this morning with their significant other or whatever. I have no idea what's going on in their life. And so I try, and I hope that the people that I hire try to do the same thing. So I try to to extend grace and live in an attitude of extending grace to everyone that I deal with. And I fail at that a lot, but I try to. And when I fail, it comes back to me in the car as I'm driving away from the meeting or whatever. And I'm like, Jiminy Christmas, you screwed that up. But I try to extend grace. And so, and I think about that as, and you guys, I don't know, some of you might have heard this before, but what we sort of, as a public, strive for is justice, right? And so justice is you get what you deserve. And so that's what we are out there, and that's what all the politicians are trying to do. And we're striving to people get what they deserve. That's like what's good. And I don't believe, I try in my interpersonal relationships with customers, with vendors, with employees, to not live like that, to just give people what they deserve. And then, now I'm losing it. On the opposite side of that, grace is when you get something that you don't deserve, when you get something good that you did not deserve at all. And so that's what I try to extend to people, whether it's in every situation I deal with is I try to give them grace. In between those is mercy. Mercy is when you don't get something that you deserve. So you deserve a penalty of going to jail, but the judge gave you mercy and they don't send you to jail. Grace would be you deserve to go to jail, but you get a mansion instead. And I try to treat people as much as I possibly can from that attitude. And I think that that's what creates a win-win situation all the way around, because somehow that comes back also, that attitude, it is true that people treat you basically the way that you treat them. And so, if you treat them in a graceful way, then they'll treat you in a graceful way. And then, not getting all sappy, but the world kind of gets to be a better place. Does that help?
Well, first off, it starts being the presence of someone who puts a lot of emphasis on the customer and doesn't put an emphasis on solely the income statement. And I saw that play out with my uncle about 2 years ago, probably. He was looking for some equipment to purchase for his church over on the eastern side of Ohio, over by Pittsburgh. And basically, what he wants to help the church do is to stream church services over the internet. And he'd done go the cheap way with just one camera. He wants to go all out. He wants multiple cameras all over the place so that they can move around. They also need the equipment to go from camera to camera depending on where the minister is at a certain time. And he came over to Sweetwater, and essentially, well, first off, the sales associate treated him right. He explained everything. He asked the right questions. What do you need? What are you going to use it for? And so on. It was just an experience.
Great.
It's not that you wouldn't get it hardly any other place out there. And they have not bought the equipment yet, and but he wants to get it from you guys, all you guys. So.
Great.
Yeah. We hear that a lot. We look at every comment card that comes back in. Even now, we're shipping out 3,000 or 4,000 orders a day, and we put comment cards in all of them. And so we get stacks that are this big of comment cards coming back, and we look at every one. And occasionally there'll be one that's not so good that we dive into figuring out how we made a miss on a thing. But tons of them are like that. Are stories, and it really does make you feel good, and you have to work on trying to not get a big head out of it, right? Like we're so great, but we do get tons of stories that way in email and on comment cards and stuff of people that talk about how that's just the only place, that Sweetwater's the only place they ever want to buy anything because of the way they are treated. So we hope to continue that on, as we have 600 sales engineers instead of 320 or whatever. So it's just, and it is really difficult as it gets bigger, but we hope that if we keep on saying it over and over again and doing it and showing it, then it comes through.
John, can I ask a couple of questions? One is, was it hard for you to move from owning a company to working for someone else? And then secondly, my question is I know that Sweetwater deals with professional singers and maybe even celebrities. Is there a unique challenge to dealing with that customer base?
It was, I would say that it was not that hard going from owning my business to working for Chuck. But I think a lot of that is because of Chuck, so I think a lot of it was, so he just made it easy for me. He's always relied on my opinion. And so I might have had I'm sure that I would have had a much more difficult time working for somebody else after owning my own company and controlling my own schedule and deciding what was the most important thing to do that day. So that was not that difficult for me. Let's see. We work with we work with a lot of celebrities. They are not our core business. They amazingly. This is one of the things that's sort of unfair, and we don't do it, but manufacturers do. The people who can most afford having great gear get it given to them. So manufacturers, like Taylor Guitars wants to see Taylor Swift playing a Taylor guitar. That makes a lot of sense. Taylor Swift can daggone afford whatever Taylor guitar she wants, as many as she wants, right? She could buy my entire inventory and not even think twice about it. So a lot of celebrities get most of their stuff, get tons of their stuff given to them for free directly from the manufacturers. We do sell to lots and lots of big name people. I tell people that we sell to everybody from Kid Rock to Michael W. Smith, and from Snoop Dogg to Alicia Keys, and so we sell to tons and tons of famous artists. And at the end of the day, and obviously, maybe not obviously, but I've met lots and lots of them. Most of us at Sweetwater management and sales areas have met a bunch of famous people. I would say that the vast majority of people who are famous artists really just enjoy being treated like regular old people. They're human beings, and so the less like the less like that you can be, the better. The less you want to be, taking selfies and getting autographs and all that kind of stuff. They just want to be like, they really have. I think that one of the most difficult things for celebrities is the fact that at whatever level of celebrity they are, when they get to be a certain level, they just can't do anything. They can't do anything like regular people. I wouldn't want to be Slash with his big black hair. Like, he can't go anywhere and not be recognized, you know? And so it's not that you have to have bodyguards around you all the time. You just can't, like, you can't sit down at a restaurant and have a meal and not have people, you know, like just all over you. And so I just can't even imagine how bad that would be in my, you know, that would be a real penalty. So they really do want to be treated like normal people, whatever that is. They are normal people. They're people like the rest of us. And so, you know, so they want to get a deal. They want to get a good piece of equipment. They want to be treated right. So we basically treat celebrities or people who have a record contract the same as we do anybody else. They get the same kind of deals that anybody else gets. And we take care of them, but we take care of, you know, everyone else the same way. And so what I really hear is how, like, you know, your uncle could say that he really felt like he was only buying $5,000 of stuff, but he felt like he was a $100,000 customer, or he felt like he was a celebrity. And that's the way I really want. I want to make everybody feel a mom who buys a pack of picks at Christmas for her kid playing the guitar. I want to make that mom feel every bit as special as if she were a celebrity with the way we respond. So there would be my kind of sideways answer.
What did you have to think about whenever, I guess maybe not you, I don't know if you were involved in this or not, but in considering purchasing like Launch or like Sweet Cars and all those different entities, what were the thought processes that went behind those purchases?
In virtually every case, this speaks to your, like, not the income statement deal, right? In virtually every case, the way we did it, and this is not necessarily normal among other people who are investing in businesses, but the way we in virtually every case, I'm trying to think if there was a case where it wasn't this, but in virtually every case, we were investing in the people. So in virtually every case, even there were several of these deals that Chuck and I both thought that, you know, the deal doesn't really make sense, but we just like the people so much that we really want to keep those jobs or that person, or we want to keep them doing what they're doing. A great example would be the flight school, Sweet Aviation. There was a doctor that owned it before us, and he died in a plane crash, and his family really wanted to get out of the aviation business, justifiably so. And we knew enough about aviation. We've been involved, Chuck and I both, in enough aviation stuff to know that we really did not want to be in the aviation business. There's just really not much money to be made in it. But we took a meeting with the lawyer for the family and the young man who was running Sweet Aviation. And maybe it's been 7 years ago now. And we went into the meeting just absolutely knowing that we were taking a meeting to be kind to the people and to hear them out, but had no interest whatsoever. And we met this guy who was running the business. We didn't care so much about the lawyer. He was fine. It's not that we didn't like him or we liked him. It didn't matter. We weren't really going to do anything for the family. We didn't have any ties to the family, so it wasn't like we wanted to do something for the family of the doctor who died. But we met this guy who was the general manager of Sweet Aviation. His name's Joel Pierce, and we just fell in love with it, like both of us fell in love with him. We went back out and we got in Chuck's pickup truck in the parking lot, and we looked at each other like with stunned looks, like, you know what? Both of us just kind of agreed, you know, we ought to do this. It's a reasonable enough amount of money. We're not going to lose that much. We probably won't ever make very much, but it's going to keep some jobs in Fort Wayne, and we really want to support that guy. And so that's been the case in most of these situations. With Launch Optical, the guy that owned it and that owned it and his wife were just really struggling, and we just really love Larry and Carol. And they're older people. You know, on the one hand, I've got this young guy who I want to keep in Fort Wayne, and I want to have he and his wife and his 3 kids like grow up with a great environment and help to grow this business the way that we think we can. On the other hand, we've got Lange. It's kind of an old school thing, and it's been in business for many, many, many years. And the guy that owns it is in his late 70s, and he and his wife Carol are just really good people. They've got a bunch of really good people working for them. And so we got into that business because of those people. And I'd say that I could pick that out in virtually every other of the 7 or 8 or 9 businesses that we have, is that, and I hate to be that, I'm not even trying to make it thematic really, but that really is the bottom line. It's that story that we got in the truck sitting in the parking lot at Sweetwater Aviation, and we said, I can't believe it. I can't believe that we're gonna get into the doggone aviation business, even though every fiber of our business being says we shouldn't. The P&L says it doesn't make any sense at all. If we don't do this, we don't think anybody else is going to, and we just love this guy, and we think that he can do a good job, and so we want to invest in this, 25-year-old guy. So that's what in virtually everyone has been. Not been any like practical investments that have been based on an expected ROI. We've had 0 investments that have been on an expected ROI.
Okay, I'll follow up with that then. Like, what were the most important lessons you've learned in merging and integrating Sweetwater's culture into these new purchases?
We've learned that it's harder than it seems like it should be. Yeah. Okay? We've learned that it's really, really difficult. It was probably not so hard at Sweet Aviation because Joel sort of is that fiber and has always believed in taking care of customers, all that kind of stuff. In some of the other businesses, it was much, I'd say that that's what the biggest thing is, that it's like, we think it should not be that hard, because for us, Chuck and me and all of our management team, it just sort of, like I was, with your question about what did I learn when coming, it just is sort of in our DNA, which is why I said that's the kind of people that we want to hire. And I'm not saying in the other companies it wasn't in their DNA. It just, maybe they had other influences. They were short of cash. They had to like be on a budget and those kinds of things, much more so. And so getting that, we thought that if we just said, just do the right thing, that they would get it. But it takes like example after example after example after example. We own a company down in Pensacola, Florida, and that's probably the one that we've had the most difficult time integrating into, because there, it's, at least with the rest of them, they're in Fort Wayne or they're in the Midwest. And so we sort of have a Midwestern value thing going on around here. The one in Florida, those guys just like, they are in like Florida time, and they move slowly and they do things the way they do it. And we've learned over that bless your heart doesn't mean bless your heart. Like the first time somebody said bless your heart, I thought, oh, that's nice. The next time I'm like going, that actually was a slam, because like he's going, bless your heart, you idiot, right? So we've learned those cultural things, and man, it's been a difficult time getting that translated, getting like we would have never thought. That's probably the biggest thing, is that it's work and work and work and work, and way harder than I would have ever thought.
Les personnages dans mes tableaux, à me voir vivre en décroché, mes idées folles devenaient lourdes, elles avaient fait